Okay, so welcome everybody. So for any of you who I haven't met before, I'm Sumedha, and I feel very blessed to be part of these teaching sessions sometimes and to meet you all. And so for those of you who've been here before, you'll know that this is an hour's session, and we'll do some chanting and a guided meditation, and then I'll give a Dharma reflection. And then anybody is welcome to leave after that, and anyone who wants to stay can stay for questions or discussion, so which will happen for 15 minutes. So that's just a bit the structure of how it goes. And so we'll start with some chanting, and I'll share the screen of the chanting book for any of you who don't have the booklet printed out. Can all of you see that? Yeah, great. So chanting is a really lovely way of, I find, helping our heart to deepen, kind of out somewhat of our habitual, everyday, this is what I'm doing mind. And we can still reflect. Of course, the chants are for reflection, that's important, but there's something about letting the sound, letting the vibration come into us, and especially as we do this together, even over Zoom. So you'll need to leave your mics off, otherwise we'll get a very strange sound, but please enjoy chanting in your own space. And I chant in the Thai style, but you're welcome to chant since you're in your own space. If you know another style that works for you, you're welcome to do that. So we'll start with just the homage to the Buddha on page 3, so Namo Tassa. And then we'll go down to the next page, page 4, the recollection of the triple jewel to start with, and then it'll go on from there. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijja charana sampano sugato lokavidu anutaro purisa dhamma sarati sata deva manusanam Buddho Bhagavati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhiti Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujjupatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Nyayapatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Samichipatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yadidam Chatari Purisa Yugamiya Tapurisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karani Sati. And then we can go to one of the teaching chants. So it's the reflection on universal well-being. So when we were in the monastery, we used to chant several of these chants, also the chant above about aging and the 5 subjects for frequent recollection. We would chant these regularly, and there's something very beautiful about how they very slowly kind of come into the heart, into our being, as reflections, as something that our consciousness is reflecting on. So this is a lovely one to do, the reflections on universal well-being. And it also touches on intention, which is what I'd like to reflect about today. So may I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. And then the last chant we can do together is just on the next page, which is about the 4 boundless qualities, the 4 Brahma Viharas. And the intention in here is about settling and diffusing these Brahma Viharas throughout our being and throughout the world. So, and there's 4 verses touching on each of the Brahma Viharas, so loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And each verse is a repetition, so even if you don't know it, hopefully by the end you can get a sense and join in. And we can share these out together. So I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a heart imbued with compassion, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a heart imbued with gladness, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a heart imbued with equanimity, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. So wherever we are, just inviting your listening to settle, yourself to gather here, maybe with the vibrations of those chants if they resonate for you. And if they don't, not having to make a story out of that. We're just gathering here, each one of us, inviting our listening to gather here where we are. So guiding your attention, and in this way bringing your mind towards your body. Seeing if you can tune into just a very simple sense of your body sitting here. Your weight, as it is inviting you to settle down towards the earth. Noticing our mind can be quite complex, quite busy. Maybe our body experience is also complex, but we can set an intention and guide our attention just to where is my body simply in contact with the earth. Noticing that at that point of contact, whether it's your buttocks or your legs, your feet, your body's vibrating, alive. We can taste that. And there's also some slowness, some steadiness that we can also taste. And both of these things can nourish our being, help our attention to settle. Noticing also that as we sit here, we're not an isolated entity. So whatever is happening in our emotions, in our thoughts, can we give our attention to the sense of support, connection with the earth, that we're supported here. And we're connected here. This earth that we're part of. Connecting also to the sense of Sangha or community. All these beings who have come together here for this session to cultivate a sense of listening, a sense of presence, sense of awareness. And feeling the support of this as we ourselves make our journey inward. That is our own and is yet connected. And notice also and honor that in you that has brought you here, the intentional energy in you that wants to come to a gathering like this, that wants to come to a place of listening and discernment within yourself. And seeing if you can just sense into and honor what your intention is at this moment. That brings you to meditation, that brings you to reflection. So some of this will be different for each one of us, so there's no right or wrong. It might just feel like a deep pull inward. Maybe there are some words come with it. I know for me a very key moment in pulling me towards meditation was when I heard a teaching of Ajahn Chah that said that there's part of our mind, part of our being that can be clearly our habit, be clearly how we're causing ourselves and others suffering. And that opened a deep pull towards what is that part of being that connects and holds us deeply, that can give perspective on the patterns that otherwise we're driven by. So this became a core of some kind of intentional form within. To explore. Just inclining your mind towards your own intentional energy that has drawn you to meditation, has drawn you to reflection. And really honoring and celebrating that intention within yourself. Not having to get complicated or having to get anything right. honouring that which has brought you to be here, be it vague, be it specific. And allowing your intention to keep holding you, its energy to keep working with you, in you, as you just allow yourself to gather here in listening. And connecting more deeply within your being. Coming to the end of the meditation, staying in touch with your body and the contact with the earth, and with your listening. This energy of intention, of gathering here, and letting that just keep gently running through as we come out of formal meditation. This is all still here in us. So, as I have hinted at, I wanted to say a little bit about intention today. And as you may notice, I have also got quite an enormous cold. So I apologize if what I'm offering isn't what it might usually be. But here goes. Let's hope. There's good intention. So so I listened to the talk that Kittisaro gave a couple of weeks ago on the Awada Patimokkha. And I found that very beautiful. So just it's a very kind of pithy teaching on refrain from evil, cultivate the good, and purify the heart. And as I was thinking about that, I was also remembering that my ordination date as a nun, which I'm obviously no longer a nun, but my ordination date as a nun was the 25th of July in 2004. And it was really bringing to mind the power of intention, of commitment in practice as something that can really hold us in a way that is really quite, I mean, it can be very precise, very specific. We can really reflect on it, and it can really hold us very deeply like an anchor in practice. So sometimes when we're like, whoa, what on earth is going on? You know, there's still whatever our core intention is in practice can help to guide us like a compass to stay aligned somewhat. And I certainly felt the power of this through joining the monastic community, where there was a very external kind of setting of intention, if you like. So, you know, you do a whole ceremony and you get a new name and you shave your head and you wear robes, and there's a whole external manifestation, and you live in community of people who have a similar intention. So all of it's very different, but something around the exploration of how we bind ourselves into greed, hatred, and delusion, and release from that. So for each person, it would have been different, but there was something of a shared intention and shared activity, shared teaching. So obviously that can be very helpful in strengthening a sense of, this is where I'm leaning back into. You know, when I'm in a space of like, I don't really know what's going on, where do I lean back into? So related to refuge also. I lean back into the intention to see clearly. I lean back into the intention of harmlessness, for instance. So I just wanted to say a little more around how powerful I think this past factor is, really. So obviously in Buddhism, it's in the Eightfold Path. It's the second one of the Eightfold Path. Right intention or right resolve. And in that teaching, it said very specifically that it has three aspects, classically. So the intention of renunciation, which is an antidote to greed, the intention towards non-ill will, which is an antidote to hatred, and the intention towards harmlessness, which is the antidote to delusion. So there's a huge reconfiguration that can happen in that, and it all sounds very general. But actually, for me, when we start to look in practice, it becomes much more real, you know. So for me, I was thinking, okay, in practice, how do I sense intention being cultivated? And the first thing for me in terms of Buddhist practice is that there is an intention to actually arrive here. So to come out of all our many worlds of what we're thinking about, what we're creating, what we are pulled by, what we're pushed by, and without judging that, just arrive here. So like the invitation in the first foundation of mindfulness, and something for me which is primordial in practice, is to gather our mind and body, come back to our body, actually arrive. How is it to be here, just with the contact with the earth? Maybe noticing new things, the support of the earth, the space around our body, the rhythm of the breath. All of this can really help us to steady and just be a little bit more grounded in arriving here. So that's like a primary intention in practice for me, is like that we come out of all the many worlds we can be inhabiting, and we invite ourselves to just gather. Does that make sense? Yeah. And it feels like such an important step, because part of how we create suffering is, of course, that we're just constantly running after everything that's going on, and we've got no stopping place. So the first intention, like stop, you know, like pause, not judging, not pushing anything, or not pulling or pushing in that, but just like, can I pay attention to what is already here? The support of the earth, the rhythm of the breath, the connectedness of that. I'm part of a bigger world. I'm nourished. You know, so this already changes our perspective a lot on the other worlds that might be happening in us. And so for me, there's an intention to stop, to gather, And the 4 foundations of mindfulness encourage us to gather, with our body, with the sense of, well, what's happening in the feeling realm, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, etc. What's happening in the thought realm, what's happening with the mind. So we're just gathering, sort of slowing down. And then for me, there's something also about an intention of that, to cultivate that which is wholesome. So to cultivate that which doesn't add to suffering. So already we're starting to pay attention to, in a fresh way, to say our body or to the heart, and to maybe notice as we were doing in the chanting, so we chant those boundless qualities, may I abide in so cultivating loving kindness, cultivating compassion, cultivating gladness, cultivating equanimity. And the Buddha says these are natural qualities, and yet we don't see them a lot of the time when we're caught in our, oh, there's this and there's that, and we're anxious, and we're, So some of the teaching is to actually come back to that which is wholesome within us and to cultivate it, as Kitasaru was talking about with, cultivating the good. And we can set our intention to do this and it's important to set our intention to do this because our sufferings are so seductive. It's like, we want to go there. We want to work it out. Of course we do. Of course we do. We don't want to suffer. But maybe there's another way of releasing suffering, which is a lot to do with learning our heart has deep capacity. So instead of going with our habitual mind and going, I must work this out and let go of that, which generally adds to suffering for me, it's like, how can I get underneath that? Find the wholesome base that is already here. So there's an intention to gather and to notice and to cultivate that which is already wholesome. The spark of kindness, that which is already listening, to cultivate that which feels connected to the earth or to other beings, so compassion. And to really make much of these places, because it's easy in practice, I think, to I really need to cut to the quick, not much time, I really need to get rid of this suffering, and it just doesn't work like that, in my opinion, or my experience. It's that we're cultivating a field in which we start to see differently the suffering that is arising and can meet it differently, and it can unfold differently. So for me, when I look at the very practical meditation guidance given by the Buddha, there's an intention to gather, to simplify, to connect. There's an intention to cultivate that which is wholesome, connected. Also say via the precepts, which are not dogmas, but which are tools for reflection. And then to cultivate a discernment, an intention to cultivate a discernment of where we are creating suffering for ourselves or others. So this is, for me, it's a very different path to like, I need to get rid of this suffering, because it's like I'm cultivating a capacity, we're cultivating a capacity to receive and know and learn to release where suffering arises. So some suffering obviously comes as part of our living package, We lose people we love. We get what we don't want. We don't get what we want. All of that is part of being alive. But what do we add to that is very important. So this sounds very big, and it can be. But it can be also daily reflections, like, say, for instance, at the moment, well, not at the moment, I mean, with the current like planetary situation, we can really take different habits and we can contemplate, is my intent, where is my intention in regards to the sense of connection I feel with the earth? What is my intention there? Maybe to respect. And then how can I adjust my daily habits in order to do that? So there's very concrete processes that we can bring into with our intentions without going into a judging right, wrong, bad, good model. It's like, it's a reflective process. And then it can become very big. So I remember being very touched by reading about Nelson Mandela, like years and years ago, and how his vision, his intention of freedom deepened over the time. So with the incredibly difficult situation that he was working with, and with all of those pressures, his intention for freedom turned from his own individual freedom to like, well, actually, that's not really freedom if my people aren't free. And that's not really freedom if the oppressed and oppressor, the oppressed and the oppressors are all bound in a cycle of non-freedom. So his vision of freedom, it really deepened and largened through a core intention to be free. And I find that very, very inspiring. So in the end, he said to be free is not just to cast off one's own chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others, which kind of knits together for me with somehow how we can evolve in meditation practice, where sometimes we come from, I certainly came from, God, I really need to get a grip on what's going on, in me, to actually, how can I really understand the dynamics of how I'm creating this? How can I release suffering? And how does that connect in the world around me? How does that help to understand what may be happening in the bigger picture? And how do we help each other to support each other, to come out from our habits that are that hurt ourselves or that hurt others, which is what the Buddha talked about as an afflicted mind state, when we're not seeing the harm that we're creating. And yet we have this possibility to come underneath it. And I feel intention is absolute. It's a really beautiful factor to help us to do this. So the teacher, Philip Moffat, he articulates this very, very beautifully. So he makes a difference between goals. So, I'm going to stop eating chocolate next week, or I'm going to get that job next week, or I'm going to, he makes a difference between goals and intention. And he says that he talks about intention as aligning with one's values, which I find really very powerful, because whereas a goal is like a sense of somehow that's out there and I need that result. We can have our intention and we can be like, well, my intention is helping me to align with my values of, say, non-harming, or even of like needing to nourish my family. And so I would like that job, but the intention is much more solidly anchored, because it helps us to stay in touch with what we care about without getting so thrown about if we don't get the actual result, the specified result, but we stay in touch with our values and we stay on that path of, I'll keep going in that direction, and we're less thrown about. So does that make sense? So it's almost like, for me, an image of a well. If I contemplate what my values are, and then I'm delving into that, and how can that help me to meet this situation which I'm in? Yes, Robin, thank you. As Philip says, help us to dance with life. So I'm coming inward, and it's like, how can I, from that place, meet what is happening now? And that in that, when we don't get so disoriented, because we're already in touch with something that is listening and authentic within us. And so even if we don't get the result that we want at a given time, we haven't lost our anchor. So this for me is very, very important. And it also helped to transform the sense of really who we are. This has worked like this for me. So for instance, when I was much younger, I had an eating disorder, and I at some point I was like, I want to get well, I really want to get well, but I couldn't do it from the part of my mind that was just like, okay, so I'll just do that. I'll just, get from A to B. I tried that like so many times, and I failed many, many times, which is why I was still stuck in the cycle. But then when I actually touched into like a core intention of like, I really, really wish to be connected with my body, and I wish to like respect this being that I am. It's like that gave me a whole different resource from which to engage with a treatment program. I needed help, but also to engage with all the mind states that were released. So when fear was released, say, because I'm no longer doing that which made me feel safe, when fear was released, can I stay in touch with that deep care and wish for my well-being, and just hold that fear without judging? And then it can move through. Rather than, oh, I need to be well, so this fear is something going wrong, or I need to challenge it, or I do need to challenge it, but by holding, by listening, by touching back into my deeper being and coming from that place, which intention is what helps us to do, I find. And it helps us to stay in spaces where we feel uncertain. Because it's like we have a sense of our core listening. So it is connected to refuge for me, really, as well. And our intentions can, of course, change. So there isn't a fix. There isn't a right one. We can know what's right for us at a given time, and it's important to stay listening to see how that evolves, even in practice. So an intention a very wholesome intention at the beginning of practice that maybe I need to learn some calm may evolve into, oh, and what kind of capacities does this give? And my intention is now to explore what this spaciousness or calm can help to bring to being. Then we can start to get curious about whatever that brings. So we're not fixing ourselves. It's not a dogma. It's an invitation to listen and align really with our values and let that nourish us. And then, of course, volition, intention, is said to be the major divining factor of the teaching on karma, which is given by the Buddha. And it was the difference that he made, as far as I understand, with previous teachings of karma, where it's just like, you have an action, you have a result. With the Buddha, it was like our intention in action that counted. And so karma is a huge subject. And even the Buddha said it's imponderable. We can't always understand, the workings of cause and effect, but there is cause and effect somehow. So what the seeds that we're sowing, as that chant that we did was pointing to, the seeds that we're sowing will bear fruit somehow, which is very vague, but we can feel that sometimes in ourselves. And I really like, again, how Philip Moffitt talks about this, where he talks about the importance of not necessarily knowing a concrete result, but of recognizing that whatever is manifesting is affected by how we receive it, by our intention in that moment, be it an intention of listening, or be it an intent, just an absent intention, which means we get carried off by our habits, or be it a negative intention, generally we will see there's the classic image in the scriptures, isn't there, of is it a rope or is it a snake? We see something on the ground, and if our mind is primed by fear and we're unconscious, we like snake and we want to, and then the next reaction. And if we have an intention of staying present, we're like, oh, it's a piece of rope, which is very powerful when we start to look at our own inner workings with that freshness, or go into a meeting and rather than taking something personally, have this intention to stay centered and recognize maybe what's going on for that person. And it can subtly change the dynamics of things. So we can experiment with this in ourselves, really, to feel the power of this well and to honor it. So I do think sometimes consciously bringing to mind our intentions, checking in on them, maybe realigning is important, and also celebrating just the movement that brings us to listen, because that, when we nourish it, it gets stronger and it helps us to come to the table somehow with discernment. So and so just in the last few minutes to say that to nourish our intentions, I do think this giving them attention is helpful without having to pin them down too much, but honoring our intentions, checking in, can help to nourish them. Giving ourselves time and space to let them do their work, really. So if our inner intention is to find some listening or some spaciousness, giving ourselves actually time and space to lean into that, to let that intention do its work. Or sometimes physical reminders, so like maybe an altar, or for me sometimes an object in my pocket, especially if I'm going into a difficult situation, helps me to stay in touch with with my sense of alignment. And also community. So however whatever your core values may be, we can nourish and explore those in community. So this kind of gathering is clearly important, or putting yourselves in context where you feel you are in touch. So for me, like being in nature really helps me to realign with my sense of value when I get confused by what's coming. So thank you, Karen. Karen's put a note in the chat for us all. So I will end there, and thank you for your presence and for being here. And anyone who wants to stay on, you're welcome to for the next 15 minutes, and we can have a discussion. And anyone who wishes to leave, you're also welcome. So.